Welcome, welcome, welcome. First of all, and most importantly, perhaps you notice that our circle has changed. It has changed early just because we're going to, I think we're not gathering during the entire Cancerian time because we're meeting late July for 2 times. So this is this extraordinarily beautiful color. I wish you could all be here in person for Cancer. And I mean, I'm even going to stand up so you can just get a little, I mean, it's so beautiful. It's so subtle. And I kind of like that we're just inviting Cancer in a little bit early. It makes sense too, because we are in Gemini, but the ruling planet of Gemini is Mercury, and Mercury is currently in Cancer along with Mars. So we do have a Cancerian influence for sure. And even today, it's kind of interesting. I almost wrote about this in the moon note, but it's interesting because Cancer and Mars are in Cancer, and the moon's in Libra, so they're square one another today. And, you know, that is a conflict between a kind of poise and grace and balance of Libra and the sometimes emotional intensity or sometimes reactivity of Cancer, or you could say the detachment of Libra and the deeply felt energy of Cancer. So things get stirred up that need to be addressed in a calm, cool way, or you could say perhaps there's too much of a step back or reserve that needs to be, the Cancer and the Mars need to come in. But generally with Mars and Mercury sitting right next to each other, something gets stirred up in the way we communicate, and we get a little reactive, and the moon in Libra is maybe offering a counterpoint today. So definitely there is a mixture of Cancer and Gemini. But we're going to start actually with some beautiful poetry and sort of some language today before we dive into the realm of astrology. So I love it on on any given day, or even before I start a retreat or a workshop or something. I always pay attention to the poetry that comes into my inbox on that day, because I always feel like, oh, maybe there's a perfect one. And there was one that came in today that I do really love, and I've never heard of this poet before, so it's nice to share a new poet. And her name is Dana, D-A-N-N, Faulds, F-A-U-L-D-S. And it's a poem called Allow. There is no controlling life. Try corralling a lightning bolt containing a tornado. Dam a stream and it will create a new channel. Resist and the tide will sweep you off your feet. Allow and grace will carry you to higher ground. The only safety lies in letting it all in, the wild and the weak, fear, fantasies, failures, and success. When loss rips off the doors of the heart or sadness veils your vision with despair, practice becomes simply bearing the truth. In the choice to let go of your known way of being, the whole world is revealed to your new eyes. That, that I've been reading Wild Mercy by Mirabai Starr, and my teacher of many years, Sophia Diaz, both are steeped in what I would call the feminine spiritual practice, or the sacred feminine spiritual practice. And the sacred feminine spiritual practice has so much to do with allowing it all in, with feeling everything and not trying to clean it up, with allowing for the mess and the imperfection and the unknown. And there's so much that wants to be controlled. There's so much in us that wants to control the experience, and yet there's just no joy in the absolutely known. Do you know, like, what delights us? I mean, what surprises us? What makes us catch our breath? What what catches us off guard, that, these are the things that bring so much joy. And I think that's part of the reason why we go on adventures, certainly part of the reason why I'm so looking forward to going on this Irish adventure is because so much is unknown, and I want to be awakened in ways that I can't imagine. And I want to not have a plan, and the natural world teaches us so much about that. And I love that it just, the natural world will always find a way to keep flowing, to keep expressing itself, so you dam a stream, and what does it do? It creates a new channel. So there's always a way that the life keeps moving, no matter how we all try to step in and control and plan. I've been noticing lately how much of my communication, and this is kind of a bummer, with my kids is about like controlling the unknown. Do you have a jacket? Dad will pick you up at 7 p.m. It's all time and logistics. And of course, those are important, but I want to be aware of the proportion of those things, right? Like, when can I just step back and trust that it's all taken care of? And even if every logistic isn't mentioned 72 times, it will, everything will flow freely. So I like the idea of the world being revealed to new eyes, and to let go. I mean, I think the biggest line for me is just letting go of the known way of being. And that's hard, but also a great practice. So let's read another one. This is by Jane Hirschfield. She's a wonderful poet, for those of you that know or don't know her. And it's called, and this is another version of this poem that I just read, and this is called Meeting the Light Completely. Even the long beloved was once an unrecognized stranger. Just so, the chipped lip of a blue glazed cup, blown field of a yellow curtain, might also, flooding and falling, ruin your heart. A table painted with roses, an empty clothesline. Each time the found world surprises, that is its nature. And then, what is said by all lovers, what fools we were not to have seen. I love how perfect that is, the found world, the unknown world, and by the found world, I think Jane Hirschfield is, saying that which we choose to discover with new eyes, that which we choose to discover in the moment, that which we choose to see in a new way and hold in a new way. Yeah, I had an experience where I was needing to make a phone call to my mom, and I was a little bit nervous about it because I had to tell her something that I was feeling nervous about. And I had built up all this energy around it, and I had been like sort of controlled about it in a way. I'd been like, okay, and then I'll say this, and then I'll say that, and then I'll say this, and da 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 da. And it's not that big a deal, but it was my own like way of dealing with stress. Is like, okay, this has got to be organized and systematized, and I've got to know what I'm doing. And then I had a conversation with a friend, and then I made the phone call. And somewhere in the conversation with a friend, and somewhere right before that conversation, I also had this feeling of just let it all go. Just let all that planning go. Just let all the right order of the words, and stand in that place in a new way with your mom, and just tell her the truth of the moment. And I can't tell, I mean, it was suddenly like I had taken off this huge winter coat or something. And I was seeing it afresh. I was seeing the capacity to just speak simply and name what I was feeling, and name the facts of the matter, and name my own truth without it being some kind of like very controlled and very heavily emotional situation. which it wasn't. I was layering all that on. And so anyway, all this is to say, I think I was able to stand with her in a new place and just tell her very simply. And I felt like I discovered new territory with her, and I felt like she showed up in this beautiful way too. So that's seeing with new eyes in terms of a relationship. But in this poem too, it's like walking into your own house, and I can either see the same old, and, you know, and feel like the cabinets need to be painted and the floor is scratched, or, you know, I hone in on the flower that my husband picked and put on the table, you know, from the roses that just blossomed, or you know, the remains, the remnants of a crazy dinner made, but like it's the kitchen's a mess, but it's also a dinner that was made beautifully, and there was chaos but beauty, right? So again, it's nothing new what I'm saying to you, but I'm just saying, let's pay attention, let's look with new eyes, let's slow down enough to appreciate found beauty. Yeah. Okay. So I actually do want to read one more piece, and I am almost certain that this was written right after the election. And maybe I could be wrong about this, but I think it was written right after the election. And it's by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And suddenly I'm having this moment that I read this before. If I read it recently, forgive me. Clearly we need to hear it again. But my friend Bruce Gelfand, he does beautiful writing workshops all over, and he always brings lovely snippets of poems and inspirational essays and things like that. And this one I've heard several times over the last several years, and every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, I need to hear this again, and I need to hear this again, and I need to hear this again. So maybe we need to hear this again. Maybe I read it to you like last week, who knows? Okay, so it's called We Were Made for These Times. My friends, do not lose heart. We were made for these times. I have heard from so many recently who are deeply and properly bewildered. They are concerned about the state of affairs in our world now. Ours is a time of almost daily astonishment and often righteous rage over the latest degradations of what matters most to civilized, visionary people. You are right in your assessments. The luster and hubris some have aspired to while endorsing acts so heinous against children, elders, everyday people, the poor, the unguarded, the helpless, is breathtaking. Yet I urge you, ask you, gentle you, to please not spend your spirit dry by bewailing these difficult times. Especially, do not lose hope. Most particularly because the fact is that we were made for these times. Yes, for years we've been learning, practicing, been in training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement. I grew up on the Great Lakes and recognize a seaworthy vessel when I see one. Regarding awakened souls, there have never been more able vessels in the waters than there are right now across the world. And they are fully provisioned and able to signal one another as never before in the history of humankind. Look out over the prow. There are millions of boats of righteous souls on the waters with you. Even though your veneers may shiver from every wave in this stormy royal, I assure you that the long timbers composing your prow and rudder come from a greater forest. That long-grained lumber is known to withstand storms, to hold together, to hold its own, and to advance regardless. In any dark time, there's a tendency to veer toward fainting over how much is wrong or unmended in the world. Do not focus on that. There's a tendency, too, to fall into being weakened by dwelling on what is outside your reach, by what cannot yet be. Do not focus there. That is spending the wind without raising the sails. We are needed. That is all I know. That is all we can know. And though we meet resistance, we more so will meet great souls who will hail us, love us, and guide us, and we will know them when they appear. Didn't you say you were a believer? Didn't you say you pledged to listen to a voice greater? Didn't you ask for grace? Don't you remember that to be in grace means to submit to the voice greater? Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding to, adding more, continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Are you thinking about your rising sign right now? Stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, build signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of the soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy toward others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would help to calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. There will always be times when you feel discouraged. I too have felt despair many times in my life, but I do not keep a chair for it. I will not entertain it. It is not allowed to eat from my plate. The reason is this: in my uttermost bones, I know something, as do you. It is that there can be no despair when you remember why you came to earth, who you serve, and who sent you here. The good words we say and the good deeds we do are not ours. They are the words and deeds of the one who brought us here. In that spirit, I hope you will write this on your wall. When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe, there can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. How about that? To me, I mean, I should read this every morning because it's so easy to get into the place of, I experience this as so easy to get in the place of I'm not doing enough, it's overwhelming, I can't, what concrete action can I take? Whatever concrete action I'm taking isn't enough. I mean, like I can get into a spiral. And it's so moving to me to remember that it's about being lit. It's about being present and loving and connected, and the tiny gestures that make up every day, and being willing to work together and being willing to look out onto the ocean and say, look, there are all these vessels that are worthy vessels. My God, you out there, this little group, we're all worthy vessels. We're all wanting to make a difference. We wouldn't be studying esoteric astrology if not, because esoteric astrology is profoundly interested in what I can give. What can I do with the tools that I have available to me? How can I be of use in the world? How can I be of use in my day? How can I be generous with myself? And that's why I study astrology. That's why I hope some of you are studying astrology. And, you know, we are souls on deck, and we are in the middle of wild seas, and the only thing we can do is act consciously and know that there are thousands of others that are acting consciously. You know, in the Alice Bailey books, they call there's a whole group that called the New Group of World Servers. The Tibetan talks about the new group of world servers. And he says that often, it doesn't have to be, these people do not have to even have a spiritual background. They don't even have to feel like, they don't even have to say that they're doing spiritual work. In fact, many new group of world servers are just out there growing the light, and they're not spiritual students, but they are spiritual beings that are doing spiritual work because they're taking care of humanity. And that's what we need to be doing. And I don't care how tiny it is. And I'm speaking to myself, right? So a Gemini time, which we're in, is a time when we say to ourselves, what have I been given to say? And a Cancerian time is a time when we say to ourselves, who or what is mine to care for? And then we don't have to think in the biggest, loudest terms. We only have to think qualitatively. We have to think about the quality of offering. In the podcasts where I talk with William Meader on the Radiance Project, we talk about, that the soul is interested in quality and the personality is interested in quantity. And of course, we all, myself included, we want to feel like we're reaching people. We want to feel like we're making a difference. We want to feel like our outreach is strong. But it doesn't matter if I'm talking to one person out there. That one conversation can have a ripple effect. It doesn't matter, that one conversation, just as you go about your everyday life, can build the light. And that's all we have to do here is grow the light. And there'll be some that it feels like that they're doing so much to change the laws of the land, or, advance science. And we all have our part to play. And some, it will seem more obvious that they're like, oh my gosh, he discovered the cure for blah, blah, blah. She discovered the da, 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 da for, right? It's easy to try to make a hierarchy of this, but there's no hierarchy, right? There's only our individual soul journeys that are unique and individual to ourselves, and yet are just like she described. You look to the left, you look to the right, and you look to the left, and there are your allies, there are your soul partners, there is your soul family. I don't care if you're, in your house alone, you look to the right and you look to the left, and you listen to a podcast, or you read a newsletter, and you say, oh my God, there are people out there that are thinking about these things and taking action and are awake. And we're all trying to tip the scales so that we're more intelligently loving. We're trying to tip the scales so we're not just fact-based, pure, cerebral, first we're trying to think a little bit, right? We're trying to get over the kind of gross, instinctual, reactive solar plexus. And then we're trying to think a little bit, and then we're trying to infuse that thought with love. And we're all at different stages. Okay. One never knows where these journeys will take us. But if ever you want to look that, I highly recommend you looking that up, and maybe Wyo can even find a link, but it is, We Were Made for These Times, Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Okay, good. So I also want to say to you, those of you that are out there, I did receive a couple of questions that I'm going to address today, but also this is a great day to ask me questions that are remaining, and that you, about astrological questions that you would, and it doesn't matter what they are, we can address, it's Gemini after all, right? We can address many things. But let's quickly, just as we always do, let's take a look here. And this is the chart of this moment, this very moment, not the beginning. So take a sip. Wyo made me an extraordinarily delicious almond latte with a dash of vanilla. Are you all jealous? Okay, so here's a fun game, which we've played before, but it strengthens your astrological skills. A baby is born this very minute. This very minute a baby is born. This is the baby. What do we know about this baby? Right? Like, that's just a good exercise that you can play at any time. You can sort of say to yourself, okay, a little soul is being born at this moment. So there's a little soul who's going to be a soul on the soul on deck on the sturdy vessel. And what about this little being? And I'm going to just give you 15 seconds right now. Like, I want you to say, like, the thing that stands out the most to you. I want you, inwardly, you can share it too if you like. But what is the thing that immediately catches your attention? Let's just say beyond the individual sun, moon, rising. Is there anything that catches your attention about this chart that's like, oh, I'm curious about that, or I know something about this little baby being already? And I'll do the same. I'm seeing a couple of aspects that I think are very potent. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and say one thing, and then, yeah, if you want to share something that you see, share it. But here's what I see immediately. Of course, always go to the rising sign and let that start to hum in you. But this is what's intriguing, right? Neptune over here, which is one of the esoteric ruling planets of Virgo. It is one of the planets that is veiled by the moon. So it's deeply connected to Virgo. It's the Christ consciousness in the womb of the mother, right? So that's why they're connected. And this is a being and this is a moment in time where we can be thinking about very practical things and perhaps even very practical actions that we might take. We can be looking at our life very carefully and specifically. This little being will either be, deeply analytical or deeply devotional. But the minute that we start to sort of invest hugely in the analytical part of Virgo over here, we have to say, well, look at this. The God of unconditional love in the house of relationships. So immediately I start to feel like this is a devotional being, a devotional moment, or that's going to be one of the big themes, because already we come from a moon in Libra, which is so much about right relationship. And then to the area of right relationship, we bring oneness, spirituality, intuition, merging, right? So this connection is huge as far as I'm concerned, and is a blending of the Pisces and the Virgo energy. Like, there's no way that we can look at this polarity separately. They're interwoven. This is a baby that will have the practical and the mystical and spiritual approach, specifically to how they meet others in the world. Then we could also say, and because the planets that are most connected to Virgo are Mercury, the moon, and then Neptune, veiled by the moon. And we could even say Vulcan, which is also veiled by the moon, depending on the level of consciousness of the person. But so we also have that peaceful moon in Libra connected to the Virgo. And then we also have Mercury in Cancer in the house of career. So yes, at a certain level, sometimes Mercury in Cancer can get really cloudy. It can cloud the whole intellectual crispness, and it can get the feeling life can get really messy with the thought life, and you can get really sentimental, or you can get blurry in your thinking, those are possible. But at the highest levels, this is a soul that would be thinking about humanity and thinking about the family of man and thinking about how one can care for and nourish at a greater level. And so again, we go back to the Virgo practicality, and we go back to the Libran desire to meet others soulfully, generously, lovingly, right? So this is also a baby that really has a pretty strong dharmic offering with the sun at the highest point. And it's said that whenever Gemini is strong in a chart, it will always be of great aid to blending the opposites. So this Gemini sun will absolutely help the fusion of Virgo and Pisces. So Gemini blinks whatever it touches, and it weaves whatever it touches. So there's a two-ness that becomes a oneness with Gemini. And because Venus in Gemini is also so well placed, there is also something in the ninth house of travel. You know, there's something that we could say, maybe this is a very global citizen, Jupiter in Sagittarius, who will be working across the world to better health conditions, to, you know, improve relationships between different countries. I mean, it could be something that involved the whole realm of travel because of and the world, because of that placement of the Venus in the ninth house, and because of that placement of Jupiter in Sagittarius. Yeah, like making the world your home through practical service, Virgo rising, and through tremendous loving attention to the other. You know, it's worth saying that I was talking with, we were starting to talk with one of the students in this group, one of the people in this group, about this Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And this Saturn-Pluto conjunction is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger until January of 2020. That's the exact conjunction. Now, that's nothing to mess with. A Saturn-Pluto conjunction is intense, and it's already in orb. It's already only 3 degrees away. And we have to, you have to think about that. You definitely want to see where it falls in your chart. You definitely want to see if it's sitting on any planet or opposite any planet in your chart. Because it is combustible. And we would always look at the outer planet, Pluto, working on the inner planet, Saturn. And so, Pluto is going to destroy the old ways, Saturn. It's going to empower new authority. But first it's going to destroy the old ways. And first it's going to shed the old fears and patterns. So it's quite intense. It's combustible. It's severe in some ways, but ultimately, what we get out of it is deeper strength and deeper authority. So you have to pay attention to where it's falling in your chart. And in this baby's chart, it's in the 5th house of creativity and self-expression and leadership. And, if we were looking at the exact conjunction, let's just say, Pluto, Saturn was opposite Mars, which it is right now. And, so it would be busting up some of the old self-protection or reactivity of Mars in Cancer, or old feelings of like, this is the only thing that I will take care of. And, out of fear, sometimes that can happen, or that the emotional reaction is so strong that at first it has to be outed and then strengthened so that you can be this warrior, which why when I were just talking about like the fierce feminine warrior on the field, I mean, that's Mars in Cancer at its best. The fierce divine, feminine, compassionate warrior. But first you have to address the kind of solar plexus nature of Mars in Cancer that gets stirred and reactive easily. And you have to purge some of that and clarify some of that and hold some of that in the light of day, yeah, where it can be seen more clearly and looked at with the light of the mind. You've heard me say many times that Saturn brings in the cool, clear light. So part of what, you know, is happening with that Pluto-Saturn conjunction, whatever it touches, is first it's kind of taking something apart, shedding something, healing something, and then it's like shedding the cold, clear light on it. So, do any of you have that in a, do any of you have that hitting your sun? Do any of you have that hitting your moon? You know, this is a meditation that I would like you to really deeply consider over the next number of months, because it will only be growing stronger and stronger and stronger until January of 2020. Okay. And then what's interesting, of course, is that just after that, whatever Saturn and Pluto are hitting, just after that, Jupiter will come along and do some good soothing work in 2020. But first, all the walls come crumbling down in a way so that they can be built with greater truth, greater wisdom, greater empowerment. Yeah. Do any of you have it in a, does anyone want to say anything about that? Does it strike a chord? Does it bring up anything for you? Okay, yes. So Stephen, one of our sweet members, is going to have Saturn and Pluto in harmony with his sun in January. Yes, and we were just recently talking about this. I'll bring up his chart so you can see an example of this. But, I would say this is really the next big transit that we should all be quite aware of. Here we go. Almost, except that. Okay. How much can you hear is something being cleaned in the background? What is it? Oh, pressure washing. How many of we can hear the pressure washing? Okay, it's not too bad, I think. Okay, so here it is. So yes, so Stephen here, he's having this Saturn-Pluto conjunction in his 4th house, and there's his sun in Taurus. And so you can see his sun is at 23 Taurus, and Pluto's already at 22 Capricorn, so it's already absolutely trining it. And Saturn is retrograde now, but it will be going stronger and stronger. So the exact conjunction will be at 22 degrees Capricorn. That's where the exact conjunction will be. So at that point, it'll be just 1 degree away from Stephen's sun. So this is actually a beautiful flow of these energies. This is, a lot has had to crumble, and there's been testing in the family realm. There's been healing. There's been facing necessary karma, all of that in the family realm. There's been loss, and yet all of that is leading to the 8th house sun, which is, this is the house of the disciple. This is the house of the spiritual student. This is the house of the one who wants to understand him or herself more deeply, more psychologically. So there's great empowerment with Pluto trine the sun. We grow the wealth of our light. It's not, it can be financial, but also we grow our own inner wealth, and we embrace our authority more. When Saturn, is trining our sun. When it's on the sun, it's a little more intense. The trine is like a graceful offering, like I'm lending you this energy. So in Stephen's case, he can be grateful that this is a pretty powerful conjunction, and it's going to lend him a healing and authority. and transformation. And he's already a deep thinker and powerful presence, but that's only going to amplify. Were there any other thoughts about where that conjunction is hitting for you guys? Mary? Okay. We'll look at another one. And then I want to answer a question that I have been meaning to answer for some time, that was asked by another one of our people early on. So let's look at this. Okay. So, yes, Mary, you are correct, my friend. So here's Pluto and Saturn. And by the time they are conjunct, they will be in your 6th house, and they will be squaring the sun in Aries. Now, I can think about this in a lot of different ways. First of all, I like to sort of do the individual squares, because just that helps make sense of it. Pluto square the sun is asking a certain shedding and asking a letting go. It's like almost like that first poem, you know, in fact, that first poem that I read is very Pluto square the sun. It's like, you cannot control a tornado. You cannot control a tsunami. You have to let the energy go. You have to surrender to it. And Pluto square the sun really says that. And you've already had it hit once, so maybe something's already underway that you're feeling around Pluto square the sun. So that's going to be hitting all along, and it's going to be hitting from the 6th house of your day-to-day work and your physical, emotional, and mental health. And, you know, I will say, I as well have Pluto and Saturn in my 6th house, physical, emotional, and mental health. It's not something that you have to be freaked out about and, you know, fearful. It's just like a real reinvention, and that's more of a Uranus word, so a real overhaul of your health and well-being, and it could be a real overhaul of your day-to-day work as well. So that square is going on, and then the Saturn square the sun, you've heard me say a gazillion times, Saturn square the sun is like Saturn knocking at the door and saying, I need you to believe in yourself. I want you to breathe in your own authority. Oh, I know something else. Pluto square the sun with an Aries sun sometimes strips away the sense that you have to like do it all alone. Because Mary's an Aries with a Leo rising. It's like there is a huge sense of like, this is a solo journey. And Pluto square the sun is like, It strips away some of that feeling that you have to be solo. Saturn square the sun asks you to breathe in your own authority and asks you to know that you know, and that you don't have to cast anyone else in that role. But it definitely, there are strong tests during the time, and this already got underway. Saturn already started squaring the sun for you, all through 2018, frankly. And you have a whole 2 years of Saturn square the sun, all through 2018, all through 2019 until November. And then Saturn will square the sun exactly at the end of December. Exactly. So perhaps I'm sure that you are already underway with this and feel some of this and could name some of this for us, but it is a life-changing time for you in terms of your pioneering self. Yeah. And in terms of what you want to initiate and in terms of how you want to lead in the world. And it's a square is a little more urgent. It's like, we've got to figure this out. This is important. A trine is like, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. And I'm going to integrate that, and I'm going to integrate that. Whereas a square has a little more urgency to it. Or sometimes the outer factors are stronger. Like there's external circumstances that you have to deal with, in the moment. It's too simplistic to divide it like that, but that's, generally there's a little more ease with the trine. Okay, good. So, good. So I do want to talk a little bit now about, I'll address a smaller question first that came from Lynette, And it's a question that is a really good question, and many of us have similar things going on around it. And she's simply asking, and I'm going to bring up her chart so you can see it. She's asking about the rising sign being in the sign opposite where the North Node is. So remember how you've heard me talk about the North Node as a mini rising sign? And so then the question becomes, well, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to call in Sagittarius, or am I supposed to call in Gemini? Because Gemini is my North Node, and they're both important, and they're both, you know, destiny calling. The thing that I would say for that is that, of course, in this situation, it's a polarity. So again, you call in the polarity, bottom line, and you don't worry, because both need to be integrated. But what we could say is that I would still prioritize the rising sign. I would still say that the rising sign, as far as we are concerned, is the most potent position. You could evolve, you know, there is another position in the chart called the monadic point, which is the spirit point, which most of us are not, none of us are ready for, but we can still name it, which is perhaps a more important point, but it's the sun, it's the point opposite the sun. So like in Lonette's case, it would be Aries in the fourth house. But for our soul-centered purposes, the rising sign is the most important position. And we call in the highest version of that, which is the visionary and the philosopher and the one who knows how to uplift and point the way on the spiritual path. But then what we could say is, but look at this, you know, you can't just be the cheerleader, philosopher, big picture. You also equally have, Lonette, a responsibility to provide all the beautiful detail and facts, and, you know, to understand the systems of things, because a North Node in Gemini in the sixth house wants to categorize and systematize and organize and provide the facts so that, you know, you can inspire through your knowledge, you can inspire through your ability to share important information. So it's a blending of the concrete mind and the abstract mind. It's a blending of the big mind and more practical mind. And both are definitely being required of you. So there's no problem here. It's just greater nuance. And you can really go back and forth and work to blend them. And if you have the big picture energy, then you have to say, okay, and how am I going to get there? How many little conversations will I need to have? How many classes will I take? How will I systematize all the information that I discover in those classes? And then, okay, but what's it all about anyway? Now I have to go back to remind myself, you know, like read a piece like the Clarissa Pinkola Estes. What's it all about anyway, you know? And what's the highest call? And the highest call is to give of our soul selves as freely and radiantly and generously as we can, yeah? So in a way, it's just simply absolutely both and the weaving of the two, and you know, the two sides of a stick. You hand the stick over, you don't hand over one side of the stick. So it's both and. So don't feel torn by it, feel deliciously invited to weave the two together. Okay, so another, and please, you know, as I'm going, if there are questions that are coming up based on what I'm saying, write them in. Okay. We're having another kind of Gemini class, right? We're having a class where I'm covering lots of different territory and where we're asking questions. That's the best thing to do under Gemini, is to ask questions and to remind ourselves what we don't know and what we want to know and what feels blurry. So Emma, in South Africa, I love, Emma, that you're in South Africa. I don't know. I loved visiting South Africa last year and feel a resonance with it. Emma was asking about this huge shift of Uranus in Taurus. And now we've been in it for a bit and wanting to just feel a little bit more into what's this all about anyway? What does it mean? And so let's talk about that a little bit, okay? And we've sort of been planting seeds all along about this, but let's just name some more. So, and this is another thing that's a huge overhaul, overall umbrella thing that we should all deeply be considering right now, because it's a relatively recent switch. It means we're all adjusting to this new energy, and it should be a meditation for all of us. So, Uranus, I found this very old and wonderful sheet that came from many years ago at this beautiful, class that my dad was teaching. It must have been 30 years ago. But I'm just going to read you from Uranus, from that. It's like typed. I think this was on a typewriter. Okay, friends. So Uranus, the means by which the soul archetype, the uniqueness of the individual, can be expressed. Okay? The means by which the soul archetype, the uniqueness of the individual, can be expressed. That's Uranian. The drastic reorderings through which the personality is placed in line with the will, life, or spirit of the higher self. Drastic reorderings. Okay, the drastic reorderings through which the personality is placed in line with the will, life, or spirit of the higher self. What needs to be shaken up so that we are more in line with the higher self? And then finally, written in handwriting is the mind as an agent of occult transformation. So the Uranian factor of the higher mind that allows us to conceive of that which we haven't conceived of before. So the reordering, the uniqueness of the individual which needs to be expressed, and the mind as an agent of the new, unheard of, yet to be expressed idea. So what does it mean if Uranus is in Taurus? What do we know about Taurus? We know that Taurus has a lot to do with our financial world. We know that Taurus has everything to do with what we value, what we invest in. That's a good word because it's financial, but it's also where do we invest our time, our money. It has everything to do with the natural world. It has to do with a rhythm that is a fixed rhythm, so it doesn't like change, right? So, it has to do with light and the growth of light and illumination and the expression of light, everything to do with light. That'll be interesting just in terms of science and what we discover in terms of light, the speed of light, how light travels, what light really is, Taurus has a lot to do with what we accumulate, objects of value, possessions, resources, riches, all of that, right? So if Uranus is entering, if Uranus is in Taurus now, those are two very radically different energies, right? Because Taurus wants to stay fixed, Taurus wants its own rhythm, and Uranus says a higher rhythm will be imposed that will shatter some of the old structures so that something new can be born. So the biggest thing will be for all of us our reorientation around our value system. And so if we look where Taurus is in our chart, there's a reorientation in that area as well. So just quickly for Emma, we can see that actually, I'm going to bring up the bi-wheel so you can see the bi-wheel, but Uranus for Emma is hitting Venus, right? And it's already been underway for a bit. And so there's a whole, and Venus is also what we value, right? So, and it's our creative life. So there's a whole reinvention, reevaluation around where we invest our resources, our time, our money. Hang on. Sorry. I'm not very good at doing two things at once. So here we go. Can you see that now? Did that come up? It just came up late. Is the chart up there? It's not up there? Oh. Okay, hang on. I mean, so while I'm doing this, think about where is Uranus in your chart? What are your values in that area? And how do they need to be reinvented? How do they need to be reevaluated? What new pattern needs to come in, right? It's important. And in fact, Uranian phrases that are wonderful to work with are just things like, I need to awaken in the realm of, whatever house Uranus is in for you. I want to revolutionize this area. And we specifically would want to say with Uranus and Taurus, I want to revolutionize my values in this area. What we're doing is we're shaking loose of our old attachments. Okay, so practically speaking, you've heard me say this now a couple times, absolutely, the whole money system is changing. Our whole way of working with money, it will probably, as I've said before, probably all be online. Everything will be online by the time 7 or 8 years is up. We will, as a humanity, start to be really evaluating. Hopefully higher values will come to the surface. We'll have to, some of the old values that no longer serve us are going to be shattered. There's going to be an earthquake. We are going to have lots of innovation around the whole money system. I would imagine, how there have been the whole things about investing in the small businesses, like offering loans to the women who are making beautiful products, but they need support. I would imagine we're going to have all kinds of things like that with Uranus and Taurus, new things to invest in, questions about what we're investing in, and the desire to bring the new to the whole realm of resources, and personally, the desire to detach from those desires which are no longer serving us. So always, Taurus needs to elevate its desires. It loves something and, oh, yum, yum, and yes, this is so delicious and so satisfying. But then we realize, oh my gosh, there's a higher version of that. There's a better version of that. There's a greater light that I can focus in on that serves me. And then let's also say to ourselves that Taurus rules the natural world, and it rules all cataclysmic natural events. It rules everything that nature does. It's like that second poem, or the first poem. It's like it rules all of those things. And Uranus is going to definitely, our world is going to look different in 7 or 8 years as well, because it's going to change the Taurian earthy landscape through different experiences around this. In fact, I'm trying to remember now, were the fires here during Uranus and Taurus? Because it dipped in last year. I can't remember. I think that it was dipping in at that point. So the fires all over California, I would say very Uranus and Taurus, because it's changing the landscape. It's waking us up. It's saying what's important. And we have to pay attention to the Earth of Taurus. Yeah. Does anybody else have any ideas about that particular connection? I mean, for Emma, Uranus is in the 4th house. It's changing her values around home and family. It's changing, it could change, in a general way, it could change where she lives, that kind of thing. And I think she did move during the Uranus in the 4th house time. but also it's igniting and waking up the part of her that wants to create. I know that she does beautiful ceremonies for people, like to create ceremonies that embody, that's Venus in Taurus, you know? And then she too is asking, well, what is valuable to me? What are my creative resources? How do I want to be inspired in a new way to manifest, right? But for her, the journey of Uranus will be fourth house, home and family, and then fifth house, manifesting creatively. So look at what houses are activated, and then look at what you have in Taurus that might be activated, and ask yourself, how do I want to wake up? You know, actually, I'll point out, I'll just share with you that I think for me, in like 2 days, I have Uranus in Taurus hitting my midheaven, so the point of career. And I've felt it approaching for sure. And I've felt this drastic need to reevaluate and reinvent and do away with everything that I have, all the shoulds in my life must become musts. You know, there's that book, that beautiful book called The Crossroads of Must and Should by L. Luna. And, you know, all the, like, well, this is the way it is, and this is what you've been taught, and da, 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 da. Like, that is, like, I feel it shattering within me. And I feel a deep desire to reinvent. And isn't it interesting? And I honestly, even as an astrologer, didn't plan it this way. You know, I knew that I wanted to go on this sort of more a trip that took me out of my day to day and shook things up a bit so I could reevaluate. And that's exactly, you know, within this week, that's what we're leaving. And there's something new that is knocking, and I have to let it in. And it's going to change my work in the world. You know, it might not change it, like I'm not going to become an accountant, but it's demanding increased freedom. So, you know, Emma's got that in her natal chart forever. She's got Uranus right there, right at the top of her chart. So people that have Uranus in their natal charts, right at the top of the chart there, in the 10th house, huge need for freedom. Huge need for having no boss, for expressing oneself freely, for being innovative, for being an awakener, you know. And we have to be very daring to be awakeners in the world. We have to be daring to wake other people up and to wake ourselves up continually so we do not fall asleep, right? There's that gorgeous Rumi poem about don't fall asleep, you know. Stay awake to what's happening, stay awake to how you need to grow and change. So I'll report more about that. I'm, you know, as I often say to you, it's like, well, let's look at the exact hit. Let's look at what happens during the exact hit, and then let's assess how it might unfold from there. And of course, for me, Taurus rules the 10th house. So it's like, well, what is it that I want to artistically manifest? What is it that I want to embody? What values am I living by that I could upgrade? You know, how could I share more of my truest values with those that with whom I work? It could be also Uranus is so group oriented. Uranian, like what groups do I want to commit to and embody in new ways? Yeah. Does anybody have a thought that they might share about Uranus in Taurus, either hitting a planet or being in a particular house that feels relevant or feels potent for you?
Mine is going to hit my son.
Okay, Wyo is saying it's going to hit her son very soon. Ha ha ha! Oh my gosh, as if enough wasn't already going on. Do you know? Did we looked up the exact?
Right now it's at 5 degrees Taurus, and my son's at 10 degrees Taurus.
How do I not have your chart here? Your son. Okay, so your son's at 10 degrees Taurus.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So she's still got, you know, Wyo still has another year and a half probably before it lines up with the sun. But, and the sun for Wyo is in the 5th house, which is the house of creativity, right? So there should be all kinds of innovative reinventions around the artist's self and all kinds of opportunities to manifest the unusual or manifest the new. You know, you're going to build a rocket ship, Wyo.
Deborah's is square, natal Chiron is square itself.
Deborah's is, yeah, okay, let's just bring that. And do you have any thoughts about that, Deborah? It's square natal Chiron and square itself. Hang on, Bay. I'm I'm having issues opening planets and poetry charts. But yeah, do you have any thoughts about that? So Uranus is square itself. And I can read this. I feel it is squared my natal Chiron, is squaring itself. I feel like it's transforming my capacity to belong. Aha, I like that. You know, anytime Uranus squares itself, yeah, you have to look at where Uranus is in your own chart and what your lifelong mission is around awakening, right? And how this square is reigniting it, right? The square is like, it's like, hello, I'm checking back in again. I'm checking back in again. Are we doing the great work of awakening in this area? And yeah. Wyo, could you just, I don't know why, but for some reason, I cannot open the planets and poetry now. So she's going to come over. But at my transit now today, okay, yeah. Okay, hang on. Let's just hang on for one moment. Yeah, this is worthy meditation and contemplation. Thank you. She always fixes everything. She says, I wish it were true. Well, she fixes the important things. Okay. Well, I don't know. She fixes lots of things, and I'm sure we all, yeah. Okay, here we go. Let me just pull up Deborah's quickly. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so Deborah, yeah, so here we have Uranus in the 5th house, squaring Uranus. Yep, there we go. And so, yeah, so you're an awakener in the realm of transformation for your whole life through the discovery of, you know, identity, because Uranus is in Leo. And so now Uranus in the 5th house, the house of creative expression, is asking you, do you know, how are we doing with that? What changes can we make, right? What can we ignite? And like you said, Chiron is not there, but Chiron always, Uranus squaring Chiron will always revisit the initial wound and allow you to heal and use that superpower in a new way, in a new innovative way. Uranus square Uranus. That's a big, big time of change. That's a big time of change. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, Deborah says, Deborah Stryker says, my transit now today, Pluto square natal sun and square natal Neptune, and I'm moving 3,000 miles away in 3 weeks. Oh my goodness. Let's bring up Deborah's. Why did I do this again? It's okay. I think I've got it. Yeah. Okay, thank you for your patience, my sweet friends. Okay, so, wow, that's a big deal, Deborah. So here it is, Pluto, square the sun. So you're not quite, if I have this correct, Deborah, it's not quite exact. It's because Pluto's at 22 degrees Capricorn, your sun is at 27 degrees Aries. So it's actually in orb, but it's definitely going to be intensifying over the next even couple of years, okay? It is absolutely square your Neptune, exactly. And Pluto-Neptune is kind of like a reevaluation of your dreams. Oh, wait a second, I'm doing the wrong thing. Please forgive me. I'm looking at, yeah, no, Pluto square Sun. Okay, and then Uranus here. Is Uranus doing anything? Yeah, Uranus already did its work on your sun a couple years ago. But yeah, so you're in more of a Pluto time for sure. You're Pluto square the sun and Pluto square Neptune. So you're in the process of shedding, you're in the process of letting go, you're in the process of reevaluating your dreams. And what I would say about the Uranus part of this is that Uranus will be entering the 12th house relatively soon, where the awakenings are inner awakenings, where the awakenings are often about the spiritual life, and the awakenings through meditation, the awakenings through connection with that which is greater than us. So that's the next big Uranus shift for you, for sure, is when it moves, and that'll move in within about a year or so. Okay. Well, good, my friends, and happy move, Deborah. Hawaii. Oh my goodness, that's an amazing place to go. Yes. Wonderful. So I really deeply invite you to explore that Saturn-Pluto conjunction, where it is, what it's setting off in your chart. I deeply invite you to do some more contemplations about Uranus Taurus, because it really has just entered. Another way to think about Uranus Taurus is to think about Uranus and Venus together, right? Because Venus rules Taurus. So what are some of the things that you think about when you think about Uranus and Venus together? We think about innovative creativity. We think about radically new values. We think about investing in new ways. We think about new forms of beauty that could come through technology, right? Let's remember that even though technology can be a terrible thing, I mean, it can be used in terrible ways, like what we use technology for now, we need to elevate our consciousness, but we could be doing that during Uranus Taurus. We could be really upping our capacity to use technology in powerfully healing, loving, nourishing, get the good word out there ways. So let's hold that. That's one of the biggest things I think that's possible with Uranus Venus. All right, my friends, I am grateful for you. We are now going to go away for some time, and we'll be meeting again in July. And the exact date of that, just so you have it again, is, do we have it? No, oh my goodness. July, here we go, hang on. Give me a minute. It will be July 23rd and July 30th. So it's a little ways away. So, but stay in touch with me on Patreon. Ask me questions on Patreon. I might not get back to you right away while I'm in Ireland, but I'll certainly get back to you. And I'm grateful for this conversation today and for this investigation today. And big love to each and every one of you.